A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Today, I, P. Pratibha Nair, on behalf of Geeta Ratan International Business School, welcomes you all to the section of How to Plan for Startups and Legal and Ethical Steps. Geeta Ratan International Business School was established in the year 2004. GIBS is affiliated to Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, Delhi and is approved by All India Council for Technical Education, Ministry of HRD, Government of India for Technical Programs and Bar Council of India for Law Programs. GIBS is currently offering postgraduate programs MBA, MBA International Business and undergraduate programs BBA LLB, BA LLB and BBA. GIBS has been graded A by National Assessment and Accreditation Council in second cycle. It is an ISO 9001-2015 certified institute. GIBS has been rated A+ by State Fee Regulatory Committee, a fee committee of Government of NCT of Delhi, and rated highest grading A by Joint Inspection Committee of Government of NCT of Delhi and GGSIP University. GIBS has been rated Grade A by Academic Audit Cell of GGSIP University consequently from past 8 years. Also, GIBS has been rated number 2 by Times B School Survey consequently for last 3 years. During recent times, entrepreneurship has gained lots inputs from Government of India. Entrepreneurship has the potential for generating employment and creating innovative solutions to the market needs. The environment is replete with challenges like newer technology, paradigm shifts in mode of business operation, and demographic challenges. Innovative solutions are required to handle all these challenges so that domestic companies remain relevant. Students are required to critically analyze and provide innovative solutions. Demographic characteristics of India can only be converted to dividend when we create entrepreneurial ventures. Another major challenge is due to globalization. Foreign companies are quick to offer products or services based on the changed market needs. This creates another important reason for Indian students to innovate and offer new solutions. Geetharathan International Business School has constituted Institute Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell under the guidance of Ministry of Education Innovation Cell. This workshop is organized as the IIC 4.0 calendar driven activity. The Government of India has taken several initiatives to encourage the growth of startups in order to promote entrepreneurship and employment by providing easier IPR facilitation, a favorable taxation system, and easier compliance for the setting up company, etc. Even then, startups in India have to deal with various obstacles like funding, insufficient skill, lack of marketing strategy, etc. Over that, startups have obligation to operate in compliance with laws and follow the ethical behavior. The webinar is mainly focuses on to sensitize students on legal and ethical steps to follow the startup's creation, to make students understand on the importance of IPRs and other relevant acts in the modern day startup creation. Our speaker of the day is Mr. Rohit Kumar, co-founder at White Canvas Market Research, Data Science, Data Visualization, Benchmarking. And Sir has done also worked in Nielsen as Director and Consumer Insight. Sir has done his MBA from Symbiosis Center for Management and HRD in Finance and Marketing and BPP in Business Analytics and Business Intelligence from Great Lakes Institute of Management. Sir also did his graduation from University of Lucknow in Commerce, Management, Economics and Taxation. We welcome you, sir, and request you to enlighten us with your words of wisdom.
Thank you, Pratibha, for your introduction and for your time. Uh, I'm sorry, I'll not be able to switch on my camera. I was trying to do that earlier, but some glitch happens, and I'm unable to share my screen. So forgive me for that. You have to do with my voice only, and not my visual. For visual, I do have a kind of a small deck which will enable us to walk through certain ideas, certain concepts, and I've tried to make it very light in terms of uh, understanding, in terms of its use case, and not broaching the subjects of the law behind IPR, the kind of acts that you need to be wary of, because that is actually not going to be your remit unless you really want to study law. uh, I'm assuming that you're going to be entrepreneurs yourself, and your cap, or the hat that you're going to be wearing, will be that of a business person who's more worried about the product, who's more worried about the service that you're trying to create, and the customer that you're trying to service. So from that angle, this is going to be a kind of a very practical advice, largely based upon my own experiences of setting up at least two or three different ventures, and in every venture of mine, there has been some interaction as far as the law is concerned, some IPR is concerned. So I'll draw quite heavily from those experiences. Right now, the metaphor that I have used, that is there in front of you, is of a person who's wearing a mask. I don't want you guys to do that, because I want you guys to be completely free of anything that you need to hide behind, and live your life breathing easily. All right. So the intent of this discussion, let's not call it a kind of a session, or a or a workshop. This kind of going to be a discussion, and I will encourage all of you to just unmute yourself if you have any questions, if you have any thoughts, any doubts. I'll be happy to take that midway itself. We don't have a Q&A at the end. I always encourage my learners and students to raise their hands midway and unmute yourself. I would have loved to take this session face to face, because it enables you to articulate much better and connect with the audience much better. But given the times that we are in right now, it always is better to do something rather than doing nothing. Right. So my very first stint with the law, with when I say the law, it means the IPR over here. All right, not the law when you are running away from the cops, running a red light, maybe, or maybe if you are tripling on your bike, you're running away from a cop. So that's not what we're talking of over here. We're talking of the IPR. We're talking of trademark laws, copyright laws, patent laws. Right. So my very first brush with the law was in my very first job that I did immediately after college, after I finished my MBA, and that was exactly 20 years ago. I was fortunate enough to be working with a private sector special economic zone in a small village in Gujarat, and we were trying to convert that entire barren land into a kind of a township where exports could happen, manufacturing could happen, and people could set up their services center over there, be it IT service center or data centers, all right, to take care of the business. And no taxes were applicable to that area, because it was deemed to be a foreign territory, and hence you were not, uh, burdened to pay any excise duty or taxes to the government. This entire idea of, as you said, was again drawn quite heavily from the Chinese model of the late 70s and early 80s, where they set up all these different kinds of special economic zones. to encourage exports and to shore up your foreign exchange reserves. All right. So setting that context, this idea that came to me at the time when I was still employed was the name of that particular place, was the name of that particular service that we were trying to offer. All right. So it was a kind of a portmanteau of the word positra and digital, because we were trying to set up a digital special economic zone, and it was 20 years back. It was very, very ahead of its time. And we were trying to, attract the Intels, the Samsungs, the Sun Microsystems, the Microsoft of that time, to set up the chip manufacturing facility, to set up their data centers over there, right? So to that extent, it was largely a kind of a digital economy that we were trying to figure out to set up. And the idea struck me during one of our meetings when my boss was just trying to figure out maybe a kind of a logo or a name that will accompany this entire service, right? So, like I said, it was a portmanteau or a combination of the word Positra, which is the name of the village, and digital. All right. So I combined these two words together and made the word digitra, digital positra. All right. So the moment I uttered that word, my boss jumped up and said that, "Hey, this is the word. This is the company name that we need to have. Just go ahead and register it and trademark it." And that was my very first stint of entering into the world of IPR. I immediately got in touch with a lawyer, and she was well versed with it, and she was a very senior lawyer, and made the life of our entire team very easy to walk us through what all entails in trademarking a name, in trademarking an idea. And that word that I had coined as early as 20 years back got that superscript of TM right against it, and I feel really very proud. And even now, when we have reunions of that team, maybe once every 4 or 5 years, whenever people are in town, we still think of that day. We still think of that meeting when this word came to us, and it propelled us into the direction in which we wanted to go. All right. So the that was my very first stint as far as trademarks are concerned. The second one was, again, I'll talk a little later, as in one of the slides, but I want to set the context in terms of why we are here talking about ethics and law. For all of you who are budding entrepreneurs, and I'm assuming you are budding entrepreneurs, and I'm also conscious of the fact that a few of you may not want to be entrepreneurs, who would probably be looking at a 9 to 5 or employment corporate stint. Even for those who are not thinking of entrepreneurship, there's a word called intrapreneurship, which is for those who are going to be employed. They still would be expected to behave like entrepreneur, and I would encourage you to behave like entrepreneurs, because the moment you put on the hat of an entrepreneur, your thinking changes, and the first thing that you will realize and feel in your veins is the ownership of the problem that you're trying to solve, right? So the moment you put on that hat of an entrepreneur, of a startup guy or girl, this entire persona of yours uh, uh, makes a shift from doing just a job to owning what you're doing. All right. So from that angle, I'm assuming all of you are going to be startup entrepreneurs. Even when you're employed, just assume yourself to be entrepreneur, and treat the brand or the product or the service that you'll be handling as your own baby, as your own idea, which you have to bring in front of the right people who are your customers, who would probably want to pay for it, right? So keeping that lens in mind, keeping on that context in mind, why are we talking about ethics and law in startups? All right, because at the base of it is something which is going to be what I want to call, and it is something of a kind of a sublime idea, which is called the conscience. All right, I don't want, and for myself and for you guys, I don't want the law to be after you because you have broken something. All right. This I have taken from this metaphor that you see in front of you is Catch Me If You Can, is a fantastic movie, and I would encourage you to watch it if you haven't yet. Features Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks. All right. It's a great movie. The message at the end is that you just cannot escape the law, right? No matter how smart you are, no matter how expert you can be at faking it, the law will catch up to you one day or the other. All right. So the idea is that I don't want you guys to be looking over your shoulder once you're starting up a new venture. I want you guys to breathe easy. You have a conscience, and every one of us has a conscience, so to speak, and the reputation that you will carry, not only outside in the market of what you're doing. More importantly, it's actually the reputation with yourself, right? And I'm going to go slow over here because the message that I want to land over here is going to be very profound. You really don't have to be bothered about your reputation with the external world. You should always be bothered about the reputation that you carry for yourself, which means that if you're looking at yourself in the mirror, do you see an honest person? Do you see a person who has done everything by the law? All right. Do you see a person who has not tread on anyone's toe to move forward in his or her life? All right. That is really, really important. The message over here, guys, is that you should sleep peacefully, you should breathe easily, and your conscience should always be clear, right? You should not be living a life where you keep looking back over your shoulder to see if anyone if anyone is trying to catch up onto you because you did something wrong, right? The base of it is, of course, your conscience, if you have to really be an entrepreneur, if you have to do something worth your while, which you can, look back after, let's say, 40, 50 years of your professional life, you should look back with pride and say, hey, I did everything by the book, and I did not tread on anyone's toe. I did not destroy anyone's life. I made life of people. I gave employment to a lot of people. I supported a lot of families, and that should be that warm glow that should be there in your heart, right? Slightly stepping away from the real mundane life of starting up and entrepreneurship and academics and your professional life. But it's kind of philosophy, it's kind of ethics, if you want to call it. But ethics and law are inextricably linked to each other, and you can't extricate one from the other. Right. So we're going to talk more about law. We're going to talk more about how it impacts your journey as an entrepreneur, and where does actually it begins. Where exactly do you think you should be thinking about the law? Where do you think you need to make a lawyer step into your life? We'll talk more about that. All right. Make it a little more practical session over here. Now, at the base of this discussion, guys, of ethics and legal is the idea. All right. And now there are enough number of ideas floating around, and I don't know whether you have had the chance of reading this line that a lot of time that I have heard in my career, that ideas are commodities. Okay, again, going to go a little slower here because a more profound message is going to be landed onto your minds right now. So ideas are commodities. What do you mean by that? That means anyone can have an idea, and by that logic, more than two people or more than one people can have the same idea. Which means what exactly is the art that we're talking of over here? The art is actually in the execution. You and I can have the same idea at the same time, but actually the person who executes or puts that particular idea into action is going to be the winner. Now, in the context of this discussion, the idea is at the bedrock of any startup, for that matter. right? Now there are other different ways of generating the idea. Now, when I gave you the example of my very first stint with the trademark law, just imagine a kind of a conference room where it's a largish table which is going to have at least 16, 17, 20 chairs around it. My colleagues, my senior management is sitting, and we're discussing an idea, and anyone and everyone is allowed to have a say in it. All right. uh, I was fortunate 20 years back to be in a team which was very democratic in nature. Even a management trainee like me was heard. Even a 1 year old, I was just 1 year old in my profession. Even a 1 year old was allowed to speak in front of 45, 50-year old professionals who had at least 2 to 3 decades of work life behind them, and they allowed these ideas to come, right? And that's the kind of a democracy that you should be looking forward to, either in the place that you're going to join or the place that you will create as an entrepreneur. Now, there are other ways that we can think about how ideas are generated, but let's talk about what exactly is an anatomy of a great idea. Right? If you look around, you will have plenty of examples of ideas floating around. All the successful ideas that you really see, they're going to have at least three things in common, right? One is, of course, the founders themselves want it. And the second is that the founders themselves can build it. And the third is that very few others realize the worth of this idea. Now, in this context, I want to, introduce the very second stint of mine as an entrepreneur, where I myself felt the need of a solution to a problem. All right. Now, imagine there is a beautiful A-class office building in Gurgaon, and housing the A class of tenants of offices, corporate offices. You have your Harley Davidson, you have your Apple having its office, you have your Pepsi having its office over there. All right. And in the basement, you have 3 levels of parking. And I'm going to talk about a little more detail about how this idea came to me, and I'll again weave in the fact that IPR needs to be in place. So this idea came to me while one day when I was driving to this office early in the morning, and my office was also there, and we had dedicated parking slots. And while I was driving down into the basement, I was worried whether I will get parking or not. I was worried because I was getting a little late for my meeting because of the traffic conditions that day, and I was fortunate enough to get the last parking. And I had this feeling that if I don't get this parking, I'll have to again drive up those 3 levels of basements, and I will have to go and park in the paid parking area. Then I'll have to run up the stairs and see if I can get the most available lift to my 8th floor office. All right. So all those thoughts were there in my mind, and that gave me the idea that, hey, what if there is an early warning mechanism which can tell us that there is, or if there is not, parking available in the third basement. And that idea or that thought gave birth to the idea of an app which I developed with a very close friend of mine who is a techie, ex Wipro, ex IBM, runs his own business. So he was my co-founder. So together, both of us brainstormed on different kinds of solutions that we could think about. And this was again floated. This idea was floated with my CEO. He loved it because we were in the real estate business. He said that let's plug this into our next pitch for pitching for a business, and let's see if this idea flies over there. And our clients love this idea, and we, as in me and my co-founder, uh, acting as entrepreneur, working as corporate. All right. So all those, and I'm assuming 80% of you or 90% of you would be looking forward to a corporate life. And this message is for you guys. For all those who are thinking about life as a corporate, you still can work as an entrepreneur. And I was again fortunate, and this was 6, 7 years back. I was again fortunate to have a very nice boss in my CEO. He even sanctioned a few thousand rupees as budgets to work on this solution, to work on this idea, and we had a kind of a small working prototype. Now, moving forward a couple of years later from that day, I was thinking of floating this entire idea as my own idea and see if I could market it as kind of a startup from my end. The other co-founder was agreeable. He said, "Let's do it." And I checked with my existing employer that if I were to put in my papers and work on this idea, would there be a problem? Again, going slow over here. That's where the IPR comes in, because this idea was generated within the confines of a corporate. And because the corporate was into real estate, because this idea was a technical idea, they had no problems releasing me into the outside world and say, "Hey, you have our blessings, go ahead and see if you can market this idea. And if God willing, we probably even try and acquire you at a certain age and stage where this, if it reaches there, and we'll be happy to work with you guys." All right. So it was kind of a back and forth between me, the legal team of my existing company, and they all sat together and said, "Hey, the existing company doesn't have any issues with this idea being released from its confined from the corporate onto being a startup." All right. So I exited from that company, set up this own company of mine, and this was the whole and sole idea of that particular company. I did not patent it. I did not go ahead and file for the copyright of the software, because I knew anyone who is going to have that particular idea can go ahead and create something by tweaking a bit of the software, one single line, and that becomes a new software altogether. All right. So you need to analyze whether the idea is worth copywriting or not. And in that context, let's talk more about Flipkart and a few more other examples. Now, you must have heard of Flipkart's story. Sachin Bansal and Vinny Bansal, who were the co-founders of Flipkart, were I think together in the same batch, or 1 or 2 years apart in the IIT, and then they together started working in Amazon. And this was way back in the early 2000s, some 20 years back. Now, when you're working in Amazon in the US, you are, of course, privy to the entire business model. You know how this entire business model works. Uh, Amazon was again set up about 30 or 25, 30 years back, and Sachin and Binny Bansal were together there 10 years uh, in the age of Amazon. Now, when this idea of setting up Flipkart came to them, they immediately left the jobs at Amazon. They flew back to India and set up an exact replica of Amazon here in India. Now, think about it. You are a corporate, you are working in a company, and you're setting up a competition of that particular idea in a different country. All right. Now, again, you have to analyze and you have to sit with your lawyers to figure out whether what you're going to do is going to tread on Amazon's toe or not. I'm sure Sachin and Benny Bansal would have sat with their legal team, and they would have analyzed the risk, whether setting up Flipkart in India would be subject to any kind of lawsuit that Amazon could have filed against them. And I'm sure the road would have been clear. The legal team would have given them a green signal. So all of this, should make you appreciate and realize how the legal team, how the law, how the IPR works, and you have to be very conscious of the fact that what you're going to do should not be, later on construed as somebody's idea, somebody's bread and butter, which you have stolen, right? In that context, Uber, I want to talk about Uber as an example. Uber was a fantastic idea. It was completely new. And Travis Kalanick, who was the co-founder of Uber, had this fantastic idea of, setting up, a ride-hailing app in the US. And it was a completely new idea. No one had thought about it. He himself felt the need for it because he felt that the prices that the people are charging, the taxi drivers are charging, are very high. The process of hailing a cab is very cumbersome. It should be as simple as sitting on your couch in your drawing room and hailing a cab. And the moment it is there at your destination, you just put on your shoes, pick up your bag, and leave. All right. So that's the kind of a problem that Uber solved, and it is a completely new idea. Ola, of course, try to replicate it here in India, and it is again a very strong competition for Uber in India. Third example, Facebook. How Facebook was formed. I don't know if you have watched the movie Social Network. If you haven't, I would strongly urge you to watch that movie called Social Network. It talks about how Facebook was formed. It talks about how the idea was presented to Mark Zuckerberg by uh, three three of his batchmates at Harvard when he was still in his second year, and uh, those three batchmates of his actually were not coders. They just had the idea, and they wanted a coder. Their original coder quit because of certain reasons, and they were looking for another person who could, be studying computer science, knew how to code, who knew how to, create a website and make it work. And they approached Mark Zuckerberg for that particular reason. And Mark Zuckerberg thought about the idea, and he completely hijacked this. And I'm not going to mince any words, because if you watch that movie, you'll come to figure out how evil Mark Zuckerberg is, and how his very first co-founder, who was again, I forget the name of this first CFO, who first put in the first dollar in that idea, because to run Facebook in 2004, you needed servers, you needed data centers, and you to set up those data centers, you needed cash. All right. So his first co-founder was the person who lent money to Mark Zuckerberg, and later on, when it was filing for or raising more money, and there were certain issues, certain differences of thoughts between Mark Zuckerberg and his CFO. Mark Zuckerberg chose Facebook, and he chose not to work with the CFO, and he eased him out. All right. So he's that mercenary, he's that capitalistic, and he's that evil, if you want to, take my 2 ounces of thoughts on Facebook, right? But it doesn't take away from the fact that he has set up something really meaningful, which brings a lot of people together. What he has done is he has brought old friends together. What he has done is he has created a kind of a media where people can advertise and share their thoughts. Right. To that extent, I don't want to take away from him what product he has built around Facebook, and what he is building right now. So as we speak, which is the metaverse, and from whatever little I have read about the metaverse, I know for sure that that's going to revolutionize the way we socialize. It's going to revolutionize the way we even interacting right now. All right, this is through a kind of a Microsoft team meeting, but if we were to do this on a metaverse, it'll probably mimic your classroom, and you can actually see me standing on the dais, and you know giving this lecture and talking to you face to face. Right. So we had to wait for that to come in. 5G has to roll in. Broadbands have to be a lot more fatter and robust, and faster and more reliable. I think we are still 5 to 10 years away from that idea, and I'm super confident that that's going to completely revolutionize the way we communicate, and the way we talk. All right. So in the context of law, Facebook, of course, went and Mark Zuckerberg was again sued by those three batchmates of his. And while his net worth was $26 billion, he had to give only 60 to 70 million dollars to those three batchmates of his, to settle the lawsuit. All right. So to that extent, he did tread upon the idea that was not his, although he furbished it. And his argument was that you came to me with the idea of a chair, how to create a chair, and I created a couch which was much more beautiful and much more useful for the people who I built it for. All right. So his argument was that you did not come to me with something new. This was and I built on top of that. Right. To me, that is a flimsy argument. To me, that is something which is not ethical, if you ask me. The very foundation of Facebook is not ethical. If you watch the movie Social Network, you will know what I'm talking about, and I strongly urge you to watch that movie. And I would again recommend not doing what Mark Zuckerberg did to those three batchmates of his. All right. Now, coming to the idea, which is at the base of this discussion, how can you generate ideas? There are multiple ways ideas can come to you. I'm talking of those structured ways in which you can get ideas. Those two ideas that helped me interact with the IPR lawyers. By the way, uh, I am in touch with a lot of lawyers for various different reasons, and few of them are really smart when it comes to IP, and I know them because they are my friends. I studied with them back in my masters. I also did masters in business law, and two of them have branched out into IP, and one of them is working with Reliance, and one of them has his own independent practice, and they help me out when it comes to any roadblocks that I face. And again, all this said and done, I would again strongly really urge you, if you're thinking of entrepreneurship, if you're thinking of a new idea, always be in touch with lawyers, because lawyers and doctors are really important in your life, and they help you always maintain the right path. Right. When it comes to the law, always be on the right side of the law. All right. I can't stress that enough. Now, coming back to the methods of generating ideas, there are many. Sometimes it could be as simple as an idea that can come to you when you are driving down to your college or driving down to the market to buy grocery, or you're probably brushing your teeth, or you're taking a shower, uh, or you're just sitting at a coffee shop, or you're standing in line trying to order your next coffee. So ideas can come anywhere. All right. What you need to do is you have to be really conscious with your heightened senses to really appreciate when that idea comes in. And it is not something that you can be taught. That's not something that you can learn. It's going to be or innate to your psyche, and it will come to you when its time has actually come. Right. So a few structured way of generating ideas. Let me just pull up my uh, pointer options. Right. Now, the very first one that I would draw your attention to is a focus group discussion. Now, I was part of that focus group discussion 20 years back when I had, asked you to imagine a conference room where you have a table and there are at least 10, 15 people sitting, and each one of them is giving their idea. Right. The basis of this is that there will be one moderator who will be moderating it. So she will ask each and every one of the participants to think of the idea and come up with their thought, why they're thinking about that idea, and whether the other people think that idea is worth it or not. Right. The other is brainstorming. It is slightly more unstructured. Uh, it is again kind of a group discussion, but you're open to any and every idea that can be thought about under the sun. Again, moderated by one single person, and every idea gets put onto a whiteboard or on a yellow post-it, and you just evaluate whether that particular idea is worth it or not. Reverse brainstorming is also super critical in figuring out what can go wrong with this idea. All right. So the moment you come to an idea, you start reverse brainstorming by saying that how in what possible ways can that can this particular idea can go wrong? What can actually go wrong? All right. So in the reverse brainstorming, you play the devil's advocate, right? You start thinking about how things can go wrong, and you start taking the risk mitigating steps, right? The other thing that I want to draw your attention to is, and this is a very practical way of doing it, and largely for those who are going to be in corporate, and if you really want to have a very quick and dirty way of generating ideas, is called the 6-3-5 method. What is the meaning of six? You need to have minimum six participants, and each participant has to write three ideas each, which means six into three. You have 18 ideas in a matter of 5 minutes. That's it. All right. Again, pausing over here, short pause. So what you have effectively done is obviously you bring them together onto a kind of a conference room and tell them what is the context, and you tell them that they have to think of three ideas in the next 5 minutes, and all six of them come up with three independent ideas. Now I'm sure out of those 18, a few of them will be common, but still you have 9 to 10 very strong ideas to think about, and this is a very quick way of figuring out how to start thinking of the next level of a product. So the use case of the 6-3-5 method is largely in corporates where you do have access to you do have access to these six people from six different departments. All right. And you always will be having the context of the industry that you're working in, and you leverage each and every person's past work experience to come up with three new ideas, right? So for all those who are listening in, who will be probably be in corporate, if you are thinking of generating new ideas, 6-3-5 is a very well tried and tested way of figuring out the next idea. Now, once you have the idea, what do you do with it? Right? Now, herein, I'm now addressing all those who are trying to figure out a way of, generating a new idea, generating a new product. Now, the first thing that you need to do is need to have a minimum viable product, or which is called the MVP. Now, the moment you go to a fund manager or an investor, he will ask you the very first question. Rather, the first question will be, how will I exit? How will I make my money? How will my 1x will become 10x or 100x? The most important question he'll ask when it comes to business is whether you have the minimum viable product or not. All right. Now, these are the broad component of the product, whether it is functional, whether it is reliable, whether it is usable, or whether it is going to have an empathetic design embedded into it. Now, these are the building blocks of your prototype, right? And what we are saying that you should not just build the functional aspect of it. You should probably be looking at a slice of each and every single component of this prototype, which is functional. It should be reliable. It should be part usable, and it should have empathic design. All right. Now, this is the true MVP, and if you take this to your investor, he would likely sit up and take notice of this product, because it will answer most of the basic queries of the components of a product or a prototype. The moment you have that prototype, that's when you start thinking about IPR. Now we are treading the territory of thinking that hey, if this is an idea, if this is worth its time, I must not now start thinking about uh, talking to a lawyer. Just give me 2 minutes. I'm going to take a pause. I'm sorry, I did not get a glass of water. Let me go and get a glass of water. Yeah, hi, I'm back. I'm sorry for that short pause. Somebody has sent some message. Welcome all to those who have question may raise their hands. Alternatively, you can write in the chat box. Great. Right. Coming back to where we left off, it's not. This is the critical stage where I would strongly urge you to get in touch with a lawyer. The moment you're talking to your investor, the moment you're talking to raising funds, the moment you have the prototype in place, which means that you have spent a lot of your resources, both in terms of time as well as cost, to create this minimum viable product. Right? You're now thinking of a product name. You're not thinking about a logo. You're not thinking about the tagline. You're not thinking about now thinking about, I'm saying now, okay, not. Okay. You're now thinking about, copywriting the software or the code that you have written. Now is the time when you have to start, seriously thinking about talking to a lawyer. And I would strongly urge you to do that because despite the fact that it may cost you a bit of a money, to do all of this, which is either a trademark or a copyright or a patent or a trade secret, it's going to be an investment. Treat this cost as an investment, and things will look a lot more positive. So you have to differentiate between cost and investment. Uh, uh, Talking to your lawyer, getting his or her counsel, getting his or her advice is going to cost you money. But if you look at it as an investment, it's going to take you a long, long way because you have mitigated a lot of risk at the beginning stage itself. What you have done right now is, spend a few months or a few weeks writing the code or creating the prototype, creating the first set of look and feel of what the product would be. You have probably spent a few lakhs of rupees or thousands of rupees, depending upon what your investment appetite is. That's all that you have put in place right now. But if you were to actually go ahead and create this as a kind of a company and register yourself, and later on you find out that somebody has a similar idea which is patented or copyrighted, they can sue you. They can completely come at your door and ask you to shut your doors down, and you will be left with nothing in your hand but bad feelings, negative, bitter memories of what you were working upon. And you would then think that had I spent those few, whatever, thousand or lakh of rupees on lawyer, I would have, avoided this kind of pain, right? So don't put yourself in that league. Don't put yourself in that situation. Always consult a lawyer, right? So when you start thinking about IPR, you have to start thinking about the type of IPR. So trademark is one. So when I talked about my very first stint with the law, that was 20 years back, it was actually for trademark. When I wanted to when I wanted to protect the name that was my idea, which was Digitra, I wanted to brand it, right? So it was kind of a logo. So when we went back to the ad agency, they created a logo around that word Digitra, and there was one tagline that's associated with it, one uh, kind of a logo was also created out of that word. So all of that was trademarked, right? So the word trademark is again represented by the superscript, which is called TM, right? Copyright is another way of doing it. It's largely for creative works, songs, movies, software, codes, websites, all can be copyrighted. Even this deck that you're seeing can be copyrighted. If you look at the very first uh, slide, so you see the letter C in those circles with my name in top right next to it, along with the ear, so which means that if you copy from this, you're copying something which is mine. All right. Then there could be trade secrets. Now, the most famous example of trade secret is that of Coca-Cola. The secret ingredient has been fiercely protected across the world, despite the fact that it is present in multiple countries. The secret formula that goes into this liquid has been known to very few people on this planet Earth. All right. And that secret is again the trade secret, which is owned by Coca-Cola, and it gives it that distinct taste of Coke being Coke. All right. And then patent is of course the way to go when it comes to design. Maybe you have, for example, designed a new car, or maybe you have designed a new pencil sharpener, or maybe you have designed a new saddle for a seat for a bicycle, or maybe you have designed a new seat belt for a car. All right. So how that process works, how the technology works, you have to obviously create those diagrams and give it those diagrams, those look and feel in terms of centimeters, inches, how that saddle will look like, how it will be placed. Everything has to be put into writing. It has to be documented. Now, when it comes to the question why you want to protect the idea, the idea has to be really, really, treat it as your baby, and you have to give it that kid glove treatment, so that later on, if you really have to capitalize, you have strong reasons to do it, right? And the very first reason is that you have to be extracting the best business value from this particular idea, right? Now, going back to my second stint as an entrepreneur, where I had dreamed of that parking solution, uh, the business value was largely the time saved of the people who are going into a building and trying to figure out whether there's going to be parking or not, right? The business value of Facebook is that it brings people together, it connects people together, and it offers a platform for advertisers to advertise, right? The business value for an Amazon or a Flipkart is that it allows you to shop from the comfort of your couch or your bedroom or your living room. That's a big, big value, right? The moment you have these kind of earth shattering and earth shaking ideas, you have to protect them. You have to put, moats around it. Moat is nothing but it's a word borrowed from ancient world or the medieval world, where there used to be castles created to protect the king, and around the castle they used to dig trenches, dig holes, and they used to fill it with water, and in water they used to have crocodiles, so that any enemy attack, they would be first protected by those crocodiles, and then the soldiers, right? So that moat is nothing but this IPR protection that you need to have, so that anyone who is having a similar kind of an idea, they have an entry barrier. A moat is nothing but an entry barrier. An IPR, or intellectual property right, is nothing but a barrier for other people to enter. All right. The other important reason why you need to have IPR is it will help you secure funds from investors. Two very strong reasons. The moment an investor comes to know that you have IPR, it gives a very strong signal to the investor that you have skin in the game. You have invested a lot already into the idea, not only in the prototype, but you have protected it. The second signal that you're sending to this investor is that there is future potential. Again, I'll pause over here, short pause. For an investor, it's really important to know what is the future potential. And once you have demonstrated it by having IPR, the journey from, introducing the idea of your prototype, introducing the idea of your venture to a fund manager or an investor, that journey from introducing to him or her writing the check is shortened if you have IPR, right? And again, it safeguards you against competition, which you have already talked about, that this is the moat that you have built, which serves as an entry barrier to your competition. Now, there are different ways in which you can, and I'm sorry, this is looking a bit complex, but I'll just quickly unpack it, and we'll talk more about this central methodology, central boxes that you see in front of you, how IP valuations are done. Now, once you have an idea and you have approached a lawyer, or a patent office, they will ask how you would want to, capitalize on this idea, right? Um, uh, Very basically, these are theory. It helps you in assigning a monetary value to the patent, and based on future predicted worth, you come up with what exactly is behind this idea of yours. And if I were to go back to your previous slide, when you're talking to your fund manager or your investor, they would be very interested to know what is the future income that can be, thought about, and what could be the actual worth of your idea, right? So it could, there are three ways you could do it in terms of the assessment of your IPR, which is cost based, market based, and future income based. Cost based is nothing but you figure out whatever input cost you have put in place to create that minimum viable product, which can, you can extrapolate it to a bigger, larger product, or you can even imagine a factory which you'll have to set up. So all of that, including your time cost, including the income that you want to earn from it, all of that is the cost of production, and that becomes the bedrock for valuing what your idea is worth, right? The other way for cost basis, if there is some kind of a similar or an equivalent patent that has already been filed, and you can pick up from there, and the lawyers can help you figure out how exactly it could be, how exactly a number can be put in front of the idea that you have. All right. The other way of, valuing your IP is market based, which is what are the terms of utility? How exactly is this particular product will be utilized by your buyers, will be utilized by your customers? And then you have obviously got the tech specifications in terms of how complex this idea is, how exactly technology will enable you to solve this problem. All right. And the third is a more complex way of, looking at it, is how it will be perceived in the market by various stakeholders, right? It could be your advisors, it could be your consultants, it could be your lawyers, it could be your investor, it could even be your customer at the end. And you are encouraged to talk to all of them in some measure or the other, so that you have a holistic idea in terms of how exactly you think your idea is valued, right? And third is the future income based, in terms of how you perceive income coming in, right? Then of course you have to estimate the useful life of this idea. Think of, let's say, a song. I mean, copyright law says that any song that is a new song which is copyrighted, the person who created or devised that tune can enjoy the copyright for the next 20 years, right? After that, you can make remixes out of that song. Till that time, you cannot make remixes, all right? Then you have to actually think of the risk factor in terms of what are the risks associated when it comes to the income. And when I say risk factor, I mean how many competition, how many competitors will come into the picture after a few years. Because look at any idea. Look at, for example, quick commerce these days. We have Zepto, which is promising delivery in 10 minutes. All right. And you have Dunzo, you have Instamart. All of them are now quickly latching onto that idea. So be rest assured that if you have an idea, it will be copied if it becomes successful. So those risk factor you have to put in place, and see that if you are imagining revenues of, let's say, 100 rupees in the next 10 years, next 3 years, because 3 years is enough for competition to pick up, and the fourth year the income will become 90 rupees, and so on and so forth. Also, royalty rates and discount rates, if any, you have to think about. Now, just to quickly summarize, uh, always be honest. Always be honest. And the bedrock of this particular message is that today, of course, you don't have a family. Of course, you have a family, but when I say you have family, that means you'll have a spouse, you'll have children. Think as a parent that one day your child will ask you, "Dad, Mom, have you been honest?" And if you can look that child in the eye and say, yes, you have done your job right. I say this because I'm a parent myself, and I have two kids, and I always teach them the benefits of honesty. And I would again strongly urge you to be always honest. So if you have an idea, you have to tell yourself whether this idea was yours or you heard somewhere else, and you want to build on top of that, right? Always follow the law and not the other way around. Again, this is Tom Hanks, who was the cop, and this is Leonardo DiCaprio. And I do not want you to be here in front of the law. I want you guys to be behind the law and always follow it. All right. And always, I cannot stress this enough, always consult your lawyer. Okay, I want to leave you guys with this funny thing that came up on my timeline on Twitter a few months back. I don't know if you're aware of this, but Anu Malik created a song at least 20 years back. I think the movie was Dil Jale, and someone came to know that that song, which was Mera Mulk Mera Desh, that song was inspired by the national anthem of Israel. All right, so this was 20 years back, and he thought, "Inko kya hi pata chalega?" Who would have thought that the national anthem of Israel could be heard by someone sitting in their drawing room, uh, and they would have come to know that this is a song that was inspired by this national anthem. All right, so please don't do that. And happy to end here. And any questions you can have, I'll be happy to take them now. Yes, there are
Yeah.
few
So
things in the
it
chat.
was, before I invite students to ask questions, although I have written in the chat section that students, if you have any questions, you may raise it by raising your hand, or you can also write in the chat section.
Mhm.
But before that, sir, it was a wonderful talk. You have elaborated, and you have given your peace of mind in a very synchronous manner. And I hope the students, if they have any inclination towards entrepreneurship, they would have understood you really well. And I
Thank you.
and I think anybody, even if it's about entrepreneurship or no entrepreneurship, everybody should be always on the right side of law.
Yeah,
As a student, I think when they are participating, it is becoming on the right side of law. And as a nation, when we are all youngsters, and if we are moving towards entrepreneurship, I think it is an ethical part, because this is what we should do towards our nation. We need more entrepreneurship activities. We need people to come up with the ideas. And if they are moving towards that side, I think it's being ethical only. uh,
absolutely.
So the students, if you have any questions, I think they were asking a lot of questions earlier to me. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. I can change the settings and make all of you unmute. If you have any questions, but you should raise your hand, and it should be voluntarily that you have something coming in your mind. Any of you? So any questions? Can you stop sharing the screen, sir?
Yeah,
Would you mind? Yeah, because it is actually, yeah. So thank you so much. And if anyone, Pratibha, if you have any questions, do you have any questions? All right. So in the meanwhile, I can actually take that opportunity and ask one or two questions. Would you mind?
sure. Please go ahead. We'll be happy to.
Yeah. So if you talk of the students like ours, they are largely from non-technical backgrounds.
Right.
I think same applies to you. So if they need to deliberately look upon the opportunities
Mhm.
that for entrepreneurship, uh, then what are the areas, and you know what should be the starting point for them?
All right. That's a great question, ma'am. I think the whole idea of entrepreneurship is largely going to be centered around what kind of a problem you're solving, right? Regardless of your background, whether you are able to code or not, whether you're able to, work the lathe machine or not, whether you're able to design, let's say, like I gave the example of a saddle of a seat of a bicycle or not, regardless of that, if you have an idea, if you think that idea is worth pursuing, I'm sure you will get someone in your network who can actually sit with you and help you put that idea into a picture or put that idea into a code. And I'm sure those people will be happy to collaborate with you. I have plenty of examples from other colleges where students have come up to me and say, "Hey, sir, I have this idea, but I don't know how to code." And I direct them to their computer science colleagues, batchmates, and they, pick someone from there who is their friend, and that's exactly how they do it. Now look at Facebook. Now those three batchmates of Mark Zuckerberg were again non-technical. They had the idea of Facebook, but they could not code it. So they approached Mark Zuckerberg to actually go ahead and create this idea. So, and again, like I said earlier, regardless of your background, whether it is technical or not, you can have ideas. You can have wonderful ideas to work upon. And I would strongly urge you to not ignore those ideas and do get in touch with your other colleagues or batchmates who can help you, build on top of that idea. I hope that answers your question. Ma'am.
Yes, yes, definitely. So, one more thing, like, which are the areas, where more of the startups, like all of us know, tech-based startups are, are something, which is largely happening these days. But what
Mhm.
other areas they should look upon? Like, in the case of social entrepreneurship, if I'm
Yeah.
telling somebody to look into,
Yeah.
then what areas?
There are multiple areas, ma'am. Not just tech. I'm fair to assume that tech is overcrowded, but I always tell my students and learners that there is always room at the top. All right. Do not restrict yourself to any particular domain. You did mention social. That social does have lots of potential, lots of opportunities. Waste management is one of them. And I have already been working very closely with two colleges on this one particular area, which is waste management, which is it's a great idea. I mean, it's a great field to work upon, and if you can have innovative solutions around that particular thought, you can work upon that. All right. E-commerce is something which there's a lot of buzz around that. If you have again, it'll all depend upon whether the idea is new or not, whether this idea is innovative or not, or whether the process of an already existing idea can be improved upon. All right. Now, what is Zepto? Zepto is an e-commerce platform, but what they've done is they've taken the already existing idea and improved the process of delivery from 1 day delivery to 5 hours delivery to 10 minutes delivery. Right. So how they did it was that they just build the prototype for one small pin code, and they tried to experiment whether they were able to do it or not. All right. So you can take an existing idea and see if you can improve upon that. So I would strongly urge all of you not to restrict yourself to any domain. If you have the idea, which is, let's say, waste management, and if you can improve the process, go ahead. And by all means, go ahead and do it. If you have an idea to improve the process of delivering a book by Amazon, by all means, go ahead and do that. Right. So the domain is not the starting point. The starting point actually is the problem. The problem can be in any domain, and that
Yes,
problem could be personal problem also.
yeah,
So do
truly,
not
truly.
restrict yourself to any domain. That's my one short answer to your question.
Yes, definitely, truly said. Shreyasi has a question. You want to unmute yourself, Shreyas, or you want to
Yes,
write? Okay.
yes, ma'am. Sir, what is the biggest challenge of being an entrepreneur?
Shashi, there are two big challenges that uh, and I speak from my own personal experience. There are two big challenges. Number one is whether the idea that I have, and I'm talking more from the point of view of the startup, the idea and the entrepreneurship structure. Uh, that's number one. Number two is more personal. So I'll talk first of the idea. Now, the first challenge that you have to actually surmount is whether this idea is worth pursuing in its entirety or not. Right. I was fortunate in my second stint as an entrepreneur when this idea of a parking solution came to me. Was I was already employed. My CEO was behind me, and he was very encouraging, both in terms of time, in terms of money, in terms of putting me in front of clients, and establishing the fact that this is an idea worth pursuing. All right. So the very first challenge that you have to surmount is uh, to have that belief in the idea, whether this idea is worth pursuing or not. The second biggest challenge, of course, is more personal. That if you were to actually go ahead and take the plunge, you have to sit on an Excel sheet with your wife or your husband and say that, hey, I'm taking this plunge. How much money do we have in the bank? And that defines your runway. So if you have a minimum of 9 to 12 months of a runway, which means that you just have to figure out what is the cost of your living, or what is the cost of running your household at that particular point of time, and how much money do you have. Just divide the money that you have in your bank by the monthly expense, and you have the runway. All right. So if it is anywhere upwards of 9 to 12 months, you have a strong case in your hand, which is what I keep telling all the entrepreneurs, all the students, that now is the time for you to take a plunge. You're still young. You don't have EMIs behind you. You don't have a house that you have rented out. You're still probably living with your parents. Now is the time for you to experiment. Right. The risk factor for the personal life is the lowest right now when you are not married, when you don't have children. All right. So the only challenge that you now have is whether this idea is worth pursuing or not. Sreshi, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So, any further questions, students? I think that will be all. Today's students, I think they are more eager to have lunch rather than yeah.
All right.
So thank you so much, Pratibha. Would you like to say something? Yes.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So thank you so much, sir. This was a great section, and like it was wisdom of you had a very nice section, and you threw up a very good words of wisdom. And with us, it is an indeed pleasure for having me listening to you. Thank you,
Pleasure was
sir.
all
Thank
mine, Pratibha. Thank you so much for having me over. Thank you, Dr.
It was
Chadda.
definitely yes. Thank you so much, and
Yeah,
it was indeed a pleasure. And thanks so much for accepting our invite. And it is always a wonderful. I really cherish you take your time and explain it in a very nice manner without any kind of with your own pace you explain. So I think students must have learned, those who really willing to. Thank you so much for accepting our invite, and on behalf of our college, it has been a pleasure that you always help, and at such a short notice you always come and give deliver a wonderful session. No, there is no glitches in terms of the content. The content is always pitch perfect. So thank you so much, sir, and hope to remain
thank
in
you.
touch. And I hope
Yes,
the students would come up and tell you maybe whatever way I can. If you permit, I'll be able to share your email ID with
absolutely.
them, and
Absolutely.
then they can get in touch with you. So thank you so much, sir. Nice, very nice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye bye.
thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.